Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be digging into talking about the problem or talking about solutions. How do you navigate this without creating more chaos, more mess, more conflict, and actually solve a problem? Because a lot of couples get stuck in this cycle that, you're probably familiar with it. And if you're not learning how to do this better, you just keep having the same stupid conversations again. Well, there's some things getting in your way. And today we're going to be talking with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove, who's going to enlighten us in this space. So Kyle, couples get stuck talking about problems instead of solutions. What say ye?
What say I? I say, yes, they do. A lot. I don't think that I've ever worked with a couple that wasn't at least a little bit stuck in that, and most of them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess at the point that they come visit with someone like me, or probably with you as well, that there's a lot going on emotionally that overshadows the ability to do something that's very logical.
Mm-hmm.
Because when logic is the answer, emotion is actually the enemy.
Ooh, that's good. We should make a t-shirt out of that.
Yeah.
Emotion gets in the way. And we need to deal with those emotions. But the way we typically manage that is by forcing our partner to do something with it when it's really our emotions are our responsibility.
Right. And you don't want to tell an emotional machine, which is what we are. You don't want to tell an emotional machine, don't be that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the midst of a conflict, when we need to be hammering out a solution, that's the time for logic.
Mm.
And so when we have actually what we need to do is be able to compartmentalize a little bit. And it's hard to do that without some modicum of emotional self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually a lot of layers that go on to being solution focused in terms of handling conflicts in a relationship. And it's not easy to do, and we don't always understand why. But when you start peeling back the layers, you begin to see there's a lot that can go into this.
Well, and we see our couples navigate through these things successfully. And if you're interested in learning more about how do you do this, check out greaterimpactcouples.org, and you can go grab a free ebook on how to stop walking on eggshells. And you can check out our e-course 2.0 Your Marriage. But for today, we're going to just talk to Kyle and listen to some really solid advice about what to do, what's in the way, what's common, and how to move forward in this. So where do you want to start?
Well, I don't know how much advice I have, but I do have some insight. And also I'm motivated by this and have always been mesmerized by a movie scene. I don't even know how old the movie is, probably between 20 and 25 years old now, but the movie Patch Adams, do you remember it?
No, I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, it starred Robin Williams, and he was wanting to become a doctor and had mental challenges of his own, mental illness, probably some depression and things along those lines. And in the process of doing that, he was in a mental hospital. While he was in the hospital, one of the other residents in the hospital showed him a lesson that I think he carried with him for the rest of his life. And I don't know if you've ever seen anybody ask you to hold up 4 fingers, and then, they'll ask you, how many fingers am I holding up? And you'll say 4. And then they'll ask you to look beyond the fingers. In other words, instead of focusing on my fingers, I would focus on your face. And as I do that, I don't see 4 fingers, but I see 8.
Oh, wow.
And so he's telling Patch Adams, he says, don't look at the problem, look beyond the problem.
Okay.
Now, how many fingers do you see? And he said, oh, I see 8.
Mm.
And he gets all excited. Oh, that's a good answer. That's the answer. So I think sometimes we get caught up looking at the hard and fast things that we can touch and feel and put our hands on and identify, because we get real uncomfortable with things that we can't identify. We get real uncomfortable with things that we can't touch and feel. People get real uncomfortable about their relationship with God when you start talking to them about faith.
Yeah. Fair.
And I think most of us would admit that one of the greatest struggles we have in our walk with God is having enough faith, or having faith, not maybe enough, but having it all the time.
Yeah. Is he going to come through this time? I know you said this, but, and oh, it doesn't look like things are going the way that they should be. And should I be nervous? And oh, wait, I already am. Yeah.
Yeah. I have that one covered. Check.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think most of the time when we are not focusing on solutions, that we have some specific obstacles that are in the way. And if we know what those are and can kind of knock them out of the way, we might open up the opportunity for ourselves to get a lot of really good work done in our relationship and get to the core of how do we fix this, instead of, I want to focus on the problem. And I don't know that anybody ever comes out and says that out loud, but their actions and their behaviors certainly say it plenty for them.
Well, and I think that if we would validate each other's difference of opinion first, to the point where each person feels heard, then we could actually get to the place of solution much faster. Like, that's legit. And it doesn't matter what your partner's saying. If you can just say, hey, it sounds like you're saying XYZ and ABC, and it makes you feel blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Am I right? Am I getting you? Then at that point, they feel heard. But most of our conflicts come from, you're not hearing me. And then when we try to move into solutions, if we haven't been heard, then on top of that, we have all these other issues. The three biggest that you're going to talk about today, I think, really have a huge impact. Even when we validate somebody else, there can be stuff in the way for them that if they don't address, or for us, if we don't address, then it's still not going to go well. We can't get to those solutions. So what would you say would be that first big obstacle?
What do you think? This one's not really hard to figure out.
I know, right?
But it's one of the most difficult to get past. And that is, in the midst of that obstacle, or in the midst of that conflict, probably the biggest thing that keeps us from moving forward to solutions is unforgiveness.
Yeah.
And man, that's it's one of those things that in theory is very simple. But once again, because we are emotional machines, when you take a very simple theory and you sprinkle human emotion into it, the application of said theory suddenly becomes very difficult. And forgiving is difficult for us. Even as believers, it's difficult for us because it means letting go. It means not having as much of a say in how this works out. It means letting go of that and not directing the whole thing with, by our own hand.
I've got to be pretty humble to do that. And that's not always true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be humble, and really that forgiving others that you're going to maintain a relationship with requires pretty good dose of vulnerability as well. It steps pretty deeply into the vulnerability pool to say, I'm going to forgive you. I'm not going to forget, because forgetting is stupid. And I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to set myself up to be hurt the same way again.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not going to forget. And the advice to forgive and forget is not sound at all. No. The forgiving part is, the forgetting part really is an exercise in futility. So I think that unforgiveness is probably the number one obstacle to achieving a solution-focused unit, two people that are together working toward the solution to their problems instead of continuing to dwell in the problem or focus on it. One of the other results, though, of conflict sometimes is that we are distrustful. One, we're unforgiving. Two, we're not willing to trust other people. And I can tell you right now, if you want to know how to make somebody trustworthy or how to make them forgiven, it's to trust them.
Yeah.
Or to forgive them. Okay. If you want someone to be forgiven, then do it. If you want someone to be trustworthy and have the opportunity to do that successfully, then you have to offer it. And that means sometimes stepping on ground that feels a little bit shaky.
Well, and having some boundaries in that space as necessary. People think, oh, I'm Christian, I have to never have boundaries. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, no, that's not true. But you do it like you have to keep widening the pasture, if you will. As people become more trustworthy, then you can give them more reign, more freedom, more space, and you enter into more with them. But we'd rather keep them leashed and right at our side in a heel, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm combining metaphors, but you know what I'm saying. It's just we got to start taking some risks with people, and be vulnerable in that, but not to the point of being foolish.
That's true. And I think most of us would say, with a few exceptions, most of us would say the person that we trust the most is moi. I trust that my judgment is better than anybody else's when I'm healthy and functioning well.
Mm-hmm.
I trust that I know what to do and what's the best answer for me as well as for us. We have opinions, and when we have opinions, we think we're right.
Ugh.
So
Yes.
if we think we're right, then we trust our own judgment that's been generated. However, sometimes the source of our opinions is not always solid, and therefore what we think is not right.
Well, and I think somebody really important, like as in God said, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways, acknowledge him.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's tough.
It really is. But let's look at this. When we lean on our own understanding, it gives us a feeling of control.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us a feeling
Safety.
of power.
Yeah.
We can, when we can exercise that control and that power with and on other people. How healthy is that when you want to exercise power and control on your spouse?
Well, that's not relationship. That's some sort of transaction.
That's a business transaction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not relationship.
Yeah, because in business, somebody is going to be in control of a transaction. Usually, what do they say? The first person to talk loses control, loses the power. So it's a matter of just, and what do they do in business meetings? Just sit there and stare? I don't know. It's never been my forte. So the unforgiveness and the distrust, and then the need to control a situation, a relationship, a person. Folks, this is this is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing. There are people, and a lot of them, that look a lot like us and act normal in public, that feel like they have a real grip on the person that they're married to, and they kind of like it.
Yeah.
And so it would not serve that purpose well to cooperate and to open up dialogue into possible solutions to problems. It keeps them in more control if they can continue beating on someone with the problem and using it as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes an obstacle, the need for, or the desire for, or the lust or the taste for control.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty significant and powerful thing.
Well, and I think a lot of people just kind of slide right into that because of how they're raised, and they think that's normal and it feels comfortable, and somebody's got to be in that space. And what we're seeing is, when you have true freedom in Christ, you have the freedom to allow others to be who they are, and you give the freedom back to God to manage the situation the way he wants to, versus us trying to be God in those situations. And it's a place where there's less stress and worry. I love that. It's one of my favorite parts of our courses is when you see people start to move out of those control pieces of relationship, and they start moving into freedom and being okay with things being a little messy. and not having everything perfect and just so and all that, because that's how we are. We're not perfect.
Right.
And he's okay with us being the way we are.
Yeah. And when you look at a relationship and you see that one person is the one that's in control, and there's no balance there, there's a lot of stress. There's stress it's stressful to be in control because you're pushing the buttons. And what if you push the wrong one and it makes you look bad? Well, it certainly didn't look like you were in control. But to be the person that is controlled, that's not only stressful, it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
That's not in the human makeup to want to be controlled by somebody else or to allow it without pushing back. We all want to have a say, at least in our own lives, in our relationships, and the things that we do and don't do, and what boundaries are good and the ones that aren't. And there are a lot of different things that everybody needs to be a part of in order for there to be a healthy balance in that relationship. The interesting thing about all three of these things, unforgiveness, distrust, and a hunger or a thirst for control, is what God says about them. Because when it comes to unforgiveness, God says, forgive freely.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to distrust, God tells us to trust others.
Yeah.
With boundaries, of course.
Love,
And he
trust.
talks about in the 31st chapter of Proverbs that a husband who trusts his wife without reserve never regrets it.
Yeah.
That one's difficult. Not because of anybody specifically, but that's just difficult to say. If I trust you without reserve, I'll never regret it. I need to be going to look and see what regret means, because that means if there's an issue with my trusting somebody and it's my problem, then it's my problem and it's something else.
Well, what's coming to mind is Gottman's research. 87% of the couples that divorce, and it's typically the man, will not receive influence from the wife, which means I don't trust you and your input. And so there's this control-based relationship where she's trying to have influence and there is none.
Yeah.
Well, people can't thrive in that.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we start using good God-given things as weapons. How do people exercise control in a relationship? It might be the access to money. It might be sex.
Yep.
It could be
attention.
It could. I have clients who just last week had an argument, and he doesn't want her to work anyway. So right before she had to go work, he took her keys away, and she had no way to get to her job. And it was just a matter of saying, at least where this argument was concerned, I'll show you how this works. And he took the keys, and she had no way to travel to her job. And so, there's a lot of things that happen. But in the unforgiving, he says, forgive freely. In the trusting, he says, trust freely. And in the being in control, we were never in control anyway.
Yeah, there's that.
We're not in control of anything anyway. And we're told to trust God for the things that we need.
Yep.
Even the lilies of the field and the birds of the air, they trust God for everything that they need. And why should we be different? That's very, very much not King James version, but it's, I still think it holds true.
I agree. I agree.
And the reason that we are different is because we would rather be in control. It's in our DNA. It's the way we all are when we come out of the womb.
Well, and that gets reinforced. I cry, somebody changes my diaper or feeds me or holds me or burps me. Like, I got this covered. I've got this. I just need to make noise, and then I'm responded to. And then around 18 months, good parents will start teaching children how to wait.
Correct. Correct. They'll teach children how to wait by sleeping through it.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Because
so
the human body ultimately has to get its sleep. And so this is where patience begins its journey. But that same idea, the idea of the newborn, it not only talks about how they learn to gain control, but it also shows the selfish nature of a human, because every single thing about that baby, as far as what it wants to communicate, is about me. It's not about anybody else. And that has to be taught, learned, I mean, I know that's
Yeah.
chasing a rabbit, but anyhow, much of this, all that to say, much of this goes against our nature.
Fair.
To let go of things and allow other people and other situations to determine the outcome of things, along with my input, of course, is a hard thing to do. Because
Yeah,
we
is.
like the input.
Well, and the journey, it depends if you're a journey or a destination person. If you have to have the perfect outcome all the time as you define it, or as I define it, then this whole thing is going to be really, really stressful, because I have the way it should go and it's going to be right. And you better line up and do it the way I say it should be. And then when that doesn't happen, it's just really frustrating for everybody. If I'm a journey person, which I'm learning to be more of as time goes on, as I age, because you just can't be all about all the details all the time anymore. Aging gets you in the end. Eventually, it gets all of us.
Gets us what? What does aging get us? What?
Yeah, it forces us to deal with things that we don't, we just can't be perfect. You may have had a moment in your 30s where that worked out, but eventually you crank out enough kids, or you get busy enough, you start spinning plates, start falling, and you just can't keep it up anymore, and you get older and you get tired. So there's that. But
and you forget things, right, Anita?
What were we talking about?
Yeah, we forget things, right, Anita? Yes, that's right.
Yeah, sure. Oh my word. Yeah, but that then becomes so much more joy, opportunity.
Yeah.
If we'll just be present in the moments and allow people to be where they're at, it's totally fine. I've got some 20 somethings in my life that have littles. And when I spend time with them, sometimes the mom is apologetic because somebody's still in their pajamas. And I'm like, I'm the last person you need to apologize to about anything. Like, we could go to a restaurant with your kid in their pajamas. I'd be totally fine with it. Like, no problem. And I had a friend years and years ago that when I took my kid out, and I took my baby out in their pajamas, she was appalled. She's like, I can't believe you're bringing him in his pajamas. I'm like, he's 6 months old. There is no fashion show that I care about. Like, this is just the baby. You just got to go with the moment and be present, because there's so much joy there and we miss it.
Yeah.
We're all about control and power and caught up on being right.
Yeah. So. We also miss out on growth when we exercise unforgiveness, distrust, and power and control, because people say we just don't have the closeness. We don't seem to have grown. And one of the first questions I ask is, what have you walked through together? What have you solved together? What was a problem that you've held hands and put yourselves together, and your ideas and your efforts and your sacrifices, and come out on the other side holding hands? And I really struggle to find answers to that question. So these obstacles are not only obstacles to finding solutions to problems, but they're obstacles to real growth in relationships, because these things in place mean that we're not working together to get through things. So growth is not going to happen when that's the case. That's
fair. I had a really sweet moment the other night with my husband. We went through all this drama to move. And let me tell you, after living in the same house for 25 years, it's a lot of drama to downsize to half of the space that you had.
Oh, yeah.
It is still a little nuts, like super stressful opportunity for that, right? I liked it. I thought the whole process was kind of an energizing project, and I'm exhausted. But
do you like the game Tetris?
Yeah, you kind of like that, isn't it? Oh, my word. Yeah, it's very much like that. And so all of that to say, we were I was working with a couple weeks ago who was talking about this little project they had in their kitchen, and how one thing led to another, and it turned into a bigger project, and how it took like a week to navigate the whole thing. And I had this thought. I went, wow, We have done hundreds of those conversations over the last month, and we've done really, really well.
Yeah.
And my marriage has not always been perfect, and it's not perfect now, but I'm so glad that we've stuck it out, because, we're standing out in the moonlight, and, the moon is shining, and there's just a breeze, and it's getting dark, and our dog is running around. I'm like, this is so worth it. This right now is worth all of that. And look at how well we did. Like, some people get divorced when they move. Like, and I understand how that could be, because it is chaos. It's like putting all your stuff in a blender and then needing a knife, where are the forks? I don't know. But it's really beautiful when you tough out a lot of situations, when you raise kids together, when you navigate challenges together, you end up in a place where you're seasoned and you've developed some of those things, and you have to forgive, you have to trust, and you've got to let go.
Yeah.
And we're not perfect at that, but after 30 some years of marriage, to not be further along than that would be sad. And we are, and that's great. I'm just tickled at all of that. So just wanted to throw that hope out there to people, tell them to hang in there.
It's there. It's available.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So what would you say to our listeners today in closing to inspire them to take action on these three things?
I would say that the solutions are probably a lot closer at hand than we realize. And really, I think the hardest thing about all of this is to stop and think and let those emotions be put to the side and say, let's do that and see what is there for us, because you can't see it. It's just in the way. The emotions are in the way. And when what you're made to be becomes your enemy, it's hard to put it down.
Mm-hmm.
So made to be an emotional creature, to say, put the emotion away, push it aside, take a deep breath, and let's apply logic, get the problem taken care of, and then we can put the emotion back in. There you go.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these things. I think people don't see those opportunities when they're in the middle of the moments. And so bringing light to them certainly is powerful and useful to folks. And if you guys want to learn more about how you can stop walking on eggshells or deepen your relationship with God or your spouse, please stop by greaterimpactcouples.org and grab our free ebook and see what more is there for you, and have a beautiful rest of your day.